To the embryo, we have a sac, yolk sac. So after the formation of head fold, the yolk sac is drawn into the embryo and to the head area. And that part of the yolk sac will be now called as foregut. The part of the yolk sac which goes towards the tail fold will be called as hindgut. And that part of the yolk sac which will remain between the two lateral fold will be called as midgut. So for completion, I told you foregut, midgut, and hindgut. Esophagus develops from the foregut area. That part of the yolk sac which is drawn within the head fold of the embryo is called foregut area. So esophagus develops from endoderm of foregut. It's an MCQ. So once the esophagus develops, the foregut elongates. Okay, the esophagus descends down into the thorax behind the heart and ends up in the stomach by a J-shaped dilatation. So when this is happening, the lumen of the esophagus is not open like this. The cells will rapidly proliferate, means rapidly undergo mitosis to fill up the lumen. So esophagus is like one cucumber, a solid portion. Okay. So this is the first stage where the endodermal cells rapidly proliferate to completely obstruct the lumen of the esophagus. Subsequently, what happens? There is a recanalization. The central cells undergoes apoptosis or programmed cell death, resulting in recanalization. Where the lumen was closed, now it will start opening. The esophagus lined only by sulfate squamous epithelium, that is a mucosal lining of the esophagus. Central cells undergoes programmed cell death or apoptosis. So there is regaining of the lumen of the esophagus. Once this happens, amniotic fluid enters through the esophagus, goes to the stomach and intestine, results in development of stomach and small and large intestine. So there is a recanalization of the esophagus, resulting in development of rest of the portions of the gastrointestinal tract because of the traveling of amniotic fluid. So esophagus, especially the mucosal lining, is developed from endoderm of the foregut. There is rapid proliferation of cells and the lumen gets closed. Subsequently, central cells undergoes programmed cell death or apoptosis, resulting in recanalization of the esophageal lumen. The remaining part, that is in the submucosa, muscularis externa and serosa, the remaining wall of the esophagus is developed from splanchnopluric layer of the mesoderm, that is a visceral coat of the mesoderm. So this is the details of the development of the esophagus. Esophagus connects the lower end of the pharynx to the cardiac end of the stomach. Now coming to the anomalies with respect to esophagus. So the central cells, if they fail to disappear and completely obstruct the lumen of esophagus, the condition is called esophageal atresia. Complete obstruction of the lumen of the esophagus is called esophageal atresia. It is usually fatal until there is some connection between the esophagus and trachea, an oblique connection. So that is called tracheo-oesophageal fistula. Tracheo-oesophageal fistula. Next, moving on to the next one. The central cells are going to start disappearing, but not completely. So there is partial recanalization which is happening here, but the actual lumen, normally the lumen of esophagus is wide like this, but if the lumen is not regained fully, then we call it as esophageal stenosis. Stenosis means narrowing, where there is incomplete canalization of the interior of esophagus results in stenosis or esophageal stenosis. Means partial obstruction in the lumen of the esophagus. So normally what happens, the central cells has to disappear in a vertical fashion, longitudinal fashion. It has to disappear like this, right? But if at all, the central cells disappear in a random fashion, resulting in threads of cells, web of cells which are present, obstructing the lumen, not completely, but still, this web of cells bridge across the lumen of the esophagus like a cobweb, and this condition is called esophageal web, where there is problem in recanalization. Once again, problem in recanalization results in esophageal web formation. Rarely, or I can tell another condition in which the trachea will develop next to the esophagus, because esophagus are right next to one another, is esophagus and this is trachea. One septa usually oriented vertically, that's called tracheo-esophageal septum. So the trachea remains separate and esophagus remains separate, but instead of this vertically or coronal plane or a vertical plane, if it goes obliquely, then there is one oblique canal connecting the trachea and esophagus. It's called tracheo-oesophageal fistula. Fistula is an abnormal tract connecting two tubes or a tube to the exterior. Here the tube is connecting trachea with esophagus, so we call it as tracheo-oesophageal fistula. So this is in detail about the development of esophagus with respect to the congenital anomalies, which includes esophageal atresia, that is complete obstruction of the lumen, esophageal stenosis, where there is incomplete recanalization, esophageal web, where the apoptosis or the programmed cell death occurs in random direction, and an oblique connection between the trachea and esophagus called as tracheo-oesophageal fistula. Thank you for watching and learning from Logic Medico. Kindly consider liking our video and share this video with your other friends and subscribe to our channel. If it gains some knowledge, consider subscribing. Thank you.